monitoring and evaluation, targets, baseline, and data sources. Module 4, learning objectives. Introduction to M&E targets. Introduction to M&E baseline. Data sources. Monitoring and evaluation targets. Setting a target is the main part of the project. A target should not ideally have multiple targets. The target is what must be ultimately achieved, the final form or situation that we would like to see, but it is to be clearly distinguished from vision. Target and vision are two entirely different things. The target is more about where and what to reach, and the vision is more about what we want to see. A vision could be more idealistic, but a target must be more realistic. Some examples of project targets are increased income of landless farmers in the target area, reduce infant mortality rate, all children aged 16 years completing high school, all youth aged 25 years and above employed. While some examples of vision are no person in the target population go hungry, children living without fear in their communities, no child dies of preventable diseases. Vision is usually at the organizational level and targets are at the project level. An organization would ideally have a fixed vision, not change over time, but it can be different targets for the different project that it runs. A good logical framework should indicate the target at the top, then the outcomes needs to be seen to achieve the target. All the outputs that bring about these changes and the activities that need to be carried out to ensure that the planned outputs are delivered. The setting of targets is the utmost importance concerning project design. A design is invalid if there are no clear targets. It must be time-bound. Targets also needs to be prepared in different ways for monitoring level and evaluation level. Monitoring targets. Monitoring targets are basically the targets for various outputs. The team should be clear about what can or cannot be done. Targets should not be set in an arithmetic progression. They should be distributed evenly over the project lifespan. Consider the following factors over the project lifespan. Availability for resources and funding, team skill set, geographic coverage, needs among the target population, seasonality of certain things, order of succession of things concerning each other. Targets for monitoring need to be set in the same frequency as the measurement are to take place. For long-term projects, monitoring targets needs to be at least 6 months apart. And for short-term projects, they need to be monthly at least. Stop the video now and discuss with your team what are your project targets. Evaluation targets. Evaluation targets are the target at the outcome level. The measurement of indicators at this level cannot be done in a short, frequently like monthly or even 6 months. Target at any level should be set at the same time frame as the measurement. Therefore, targets at the outcome level should be set at the interval of 3 years or 5 years. The factors to be considered while setting monitoring output targets are applied to the outcome evaluation level. But there is also a discount factor that needs to be considered. This is because the achievement of outputs need not necessarily result in the achievement of outcomes as expected, though it should logically result in the achievement of outcomes. Some assumption and risk discount the results. Remember that the teams are fully responsible for the activities and inputs, largely responsible for the outputs, fairly responsible for the outcomes, and only partially responsible for the goal. Stop the video now and discuss with your team your project's evaluation targets. Monitoring and evaluation baselines. Good monitoring is the foundation upon which evaluation and impact assessment is based. The most critical element, especially for impact assessment, is the establishment of baselines against such change can be measured. Baselines are identified as a set of indicators used to describe the situation of a development intervention which act as a reference point against which progress can be assessed or comparison made. A second measurement should occur when results can or should be expected approximately after 6 months. Following the implementation of the streamlined process, this measurement is intended to determine whether the changes have resulted in improvements. Establishing the current situation should be part of developing a project proposal or a project design after approval. Establishing baseline is an activity undertaken as part of the project identification where analysis of the problem is considered. Typically, in BEE reform, an intervention may start with a period assigned to diagnostics, which entails detailed analysis, both quantitative and qualitative, in the nature and magnitude of the problem. This is commonly thought of as part of the implementation activities and is often funded as a separate activity rather than part of the M&E. However, project diagnostics are also an essential part of the M&E process and should be integrated into the M&E framework as baselines. Type of baselines. A regulatory baseline collects data on the current regulatory system like registration, license, inspections, taxation. This type of baseline is similar to what is captured in the Doing Business survey. An enterprise baseline is complementary to a regulatory baseline. It provides first-hand accounts of the challenges in a project's different size and sectors. Benefits of enterprise baseline: monitors the project progress, provides cost of the process, produce findings for communication. Stop the video now and discuss with your team which baseline will be implemented in your project. Why is a robust baseline essential for monitoring and evaluation? Quantitative benchmarking of indicators, data on hard facts and perceptions, a framework for monitoring program activities, and analysis of structural and performance data of sampled enterprises, a basis for monitoring and implemented policies and regulatory reform of partner institutions, analysis and ranking of actual and perceived business constraints, a foundation for an impact monitoring system for partners. Key features of a good baseline: use of existing data, including the doing business indicators, previous research studies by academics, previous donor interventions, records of partners, institutions, enterprise surveys. The scope of coverage of the baseline can be scaled up or down, depending on what data is available and the budget allocated. As previously noted, the baseline may be closely related to diagnostics activities within the project. For example, if a mapping of the regulatory process is undertaken upfront to determine what reforms should be implemented, or a time and cost assessment for a particular regulatory procedure, such as business registration. Current practice is discussed later in this section entitled Regulatory Baseline. Type of baselines. A regulatory baseline collects data for the current regulatory system, like registration, license, inspection, taxation, business regulation. This type of baseline is like what is captured in the Doing Business survey. A thorough regulatory baseline should map out the regulatory procedure in detail. This will provide the starting point for a before and after assessment, and it is a crucial part of M&E. Type of baselines. A regulatory baseline collects data at the current regulatory system, like registration, license, inspection, taxation, and business regulation. This type of baseline is like what is captured in the Doing Business survey. A thorough regulatory baseline should map out the regulatory procedure in detail. This will provide the starting point for a before and after assessment, and is crucial part of M&E. Key components of the regulatory baseline. A legal assessment of official regularization and procedure to compile an inventory of current relevant laws and regulations. A detailed integrated analysis or mapping of the current official framework and processes for regulatory procedures, including the official cost of the procedures and the number of steps based on information and observation of the implementing regulatory agencies. An enterprise baseline is complementary to a regulatory baseline and it will provide firsthand accounts of challenges facing entrepreneurs and firms of different sizes and from different sectors which may not be captured in an existing national study. Data on the experience of processes and perceptions can be collected directly from a sample of firms. This is typically referred to as a business climate survey, BCS, or enterprise survey, and is often captured and is often used to capture the perception and experiences of MSMEs. Benefits of an enterprise survey: provides official cost of the procedure and the number of steps involved in the process, monitors not only progress of the project with regard to its impact on the business climates, but can be made available for the public and the use of other development partners. Produce facts for a private public dialogue and media briefings and feeds them to the political and civic process. Help prioritize facts through empirical cross-checks, which can be used for project steering and political discussions. Builds visibility for the donor, builds capacity for the new local team, motivates government and stakeholders to reform. Stop the video now and discuss with your team which baseline would be beneficial to use for your project. Data collection tools. There is a wide range of tools or instruments that can be used in M&E. Typically, more than one way of collecting data will be used. In some circumstances, especially when looking at quantitative data, it is sometimes helpful to use several techniques to verify robustness of the findings from each. This cross-checking is called triangulation. The key data collection tool for M&E are listed in Table 3.1, with the main feature of each tool listed alongside. These tools include the use for which M&E is intended, the main stakeholders who have an interest in the M&E findings, the speed with which the information is needed, and the cost. Different tools, instruments have strengths and weaknesses as methods of collecting different types of data and their use with different types of stakeholders, applications with different types of indicators, and different target groups. Data source. Data source can be collected via primary, secondary, or both. The local capacity for collecting, storing, and analyzing data may also be limited or non-existing. The team may be tasked with collecting data directly and working with organizations to develop this primary data. Secondary data is a valuable resource for M&E baselines and background information. It is usually available at no cost and is helpful if a program has already begun and historical data is required. Stop the video now and discuss with your team Table key tools for data collection. Stop the video now and discuss with your team which data collection tool will be implemented within your project. Key points: preparing baseline for a BEE intervention and reform is a significant task that should be started as early as possible. Developing a baseline is an investment in good quality M&E and potentially the sustainability of a reform. All BEE reforms need a regulatory and enterprise baseline to enable measurement of change in the BE and the behavior of those in the BE. A good baseline maximizes the use of secondary data in the interest of cost, neutrality, and the potential for comparison. A good baseline recognizes that the challenges of collecting primary data can be better managed if there is clarity about what indicators need to be measured and how this will improve the quality of M&E and IA. Good baseline can be put to multiple use for engaging stakeholders, communicating with a variety of audience, and building donors, cooperation, and/or harmonization. There are multiple sources of data, each with their own strengths and limitations. Online resources are likely to be more current. Many BEE projects are now building up survey instruments, templates, and capturing experience through the IFC Smart Lesson Series and communicating learnings through expert groups, toolkits, and conferences.